This is Doctor Thorne by Anthony Trollope. It is not a bad thing to be a son-in-law to a potent earl, member of Parliament for a county, and possessor of a fine Old English seat and a fine Old English fortune. As a very young man, Frank Gresham found the life to which he was thus introduced agreeable enough. He consoled himself as best he might for the blue looks with which he was greeted by his own party, and he took his revenge by consorting more thoroughly than ever with his political adversaries. Foolishly, like a foolish moth, he flew to the bright light, and, like the moths, of course, he burned his wings. Early in 1833, he had become a member of Parliament. In the autumn of 1834, the dissolution came. Young members of 3 or 4 and 20 do not think much of dissolutions, forget the fancies of their constituents, and are too proud of the present to calculate much as to the future. So it was with Mr. Gresham. His father had been a member for Barsetshire all his life, and he looked forward to similar prosperity, as though it were part of his inheritance, but he failed to take any of the steps which he had secured his father's seat. In the autumn of 1834, the dissolution came, and Frank Gresham, with his honorable lady wife and all the De Courcys at his back, found that he had mortally offended the county. To his great disgust, another candidate was brought forward as a fellow to his late colleague, and though he manfully fought the battle and spent £10,000 in the contest, he could not recover his position. A high Tory with a great Whig interest to back him is never a popular person in England. No one can trust him, though there may be those who are willing to place him untrusted in high positions. Such was the case with Mr. Gresham. There were many who were willing, for family considerations, to keep him in Parliament, but no one thought that he was fit to be there. The consequences were that a bitter and expensive contest ensued. Frank Gresham, when twitted with being a Whig, forswore the De Courcy family, and then, when ridiculed as having been thrown over by the Tories, forswore his father's old friends. So between the two stools he fell to the ground, and as a politician he never again rose to his feet. He never again rose to his feet, but twice again made violent efforts to do so. Elections in East Barsetshire, from various causes, came quick upon each other in those days, and before he was 28 years of age, Mr. Gresham had 3 times contested the county and had been 3 times beaten. To speak the truth of him, his own spirit would have been satisfied with the loss of the first £10,000, but Lady Arabella was made of higher metal. She had married a man with a fine place and a fine fortune, but she had nevertheless married a commoner, and had, insofar, derogated from her high birth. She felt that her husband should by rights be a member of the House of Lords, but if not, that it was at least essential that he should have a seat in the lower chamber. She would by degrees sink into nothing if she allowed herself to sit down, the mere wife of a mere county squire. Thus instigated, Mr. Gresham repeated the useless contest 3 times, and repeated it each time at a serious cost. He lost his money, Lady Arabella lost her temper, and things at Greshamsbury went on, by no means as prosperously as they had done in the days of the old squire. In the first 12 years of their marriage, children came fast into the nursery at Greshamsbury. The first that was born was a boy, And in those happy halcyon days, when the old squire was still alive, great with joy at the birth of an heir to Greshamsbury, bonfires gleamed through the countryside. Oxen were roasted whole, and the customary paraphernalia of joy usual to rich Britons on such occasions were gone through with wondrous eclat. But when the 10th baby, the 9th little girl, was brought into the world, the outward joy was not so great. Then other troubles came on. Some of these little girls were sickly, some very sickly. Lady Arabella and had her faults, and they were such as were extremely detrimental to her husband's happiness and her own. But that of being an indifferent mother was not among them. She had worried her husband daily for years because he was not in Parliament. She had worried him because he would not furnish the house in Portman Square. She had worried him because he objected to have more people every winter at Greshamsbury Park than the house would hold. But now she changed her tune and worried because Selina coughed, because Helena was hectic, because poor Sophie's spine was weak, and Matilda's appetite was gone. Worrying from such causes was pardonable, it will be said. So it was, but the manner was hardly pardonable. Selina's cough was certainly not fairly attributable to old-fashioned furniture in the Portman Square, nor would Sophie's spine have been materially benefited by her father having a seat in Parliament, and yet to have heard Lady Arabella discussing those matters in family conclave, one would have thought she would have expected such results.